Achievement is this tiny ephemeral moment that you can appreciate it for what it is for a short time, but then it's gone. It's like gone forever. Like you can sort of go back and be like, oh yeah, remember when I crossed the finish line at Cocodona, how good that felt? But you're getting this like 2% sliver of that feeling, and achievement is just it's gone forever. So it's like you have to love the process, and if you don't love the process, achievement's actually not going to really get you anything that lasts and is eternal in life at all.
Welcome to On Your Lead, the show about the miles that make you better at life, leadership, and everything in between. I'm Thad David, a Marine Recon Scout Sniper veteran, speaker, and endurance athlete. Let's get into it.
Welcome to another episode. We're here today with Kilian Korth, the king of 200s. How are you doing, Kilian?
I'm doing pretty well. Thanks for having me on. It's great to be with you.
And well, thank you so much for jumping on. I know you are just extremely busy. You got so many things going on. And I'm excited just to have
less busy nowadays.
Well, nowadays with the recent injury and surgery.
Yep. Less busy. I'm filling my days with arbitrary objectives as opposed to like actual career objectives.
Okay. Well, I mean, I actually wanted to jump into that too, because I think I got a ton of respect for that pivot shift. I think a lot of people see an injury and they just stop. I'm thinking about now an amateur like myself that I like to do ultras, but when I say I do ultras and you do ultras, that's two different people doing ultras and running. But for you, I mean, you picked up right away and you seemed like you picked up the 75 strong. Did I say that right?
75 hard, yeah.
75 hard. Yeah. So what made you do that? What was the mental thinking with that? Did you have a game plan or just looking for something?
So it was like semi-impulsive in the sense of, I'm just like looking for something to fill my days where running would normally be taking up like 24 hours of my week. So I've got this like massive chunk of time that I just want to be doing things that aren't, useless distractions. I mean, I think there's probably a time and place for thoughtless distraction, but it's not the thing that's going to like make you feel as if you're being productive. And so I'm a writer, and so I've had a lot of time to write, which has been kind of a blessing. But then, I want to stay fit. I would like to continue to get my fix of endorphins every single day. Like I genuinely characterize my relationship to exercise as a reasonably healthy addiction, but like, my brain functions better if I've had a morning workout and that sort of thing. So it just felt natural to just sort of, okay, what can I do that's realistic, that's not going to interrupt the process of my ankle healing, but allows me to kind of pursue other things. And so 75 hard was a way to do that. And for anyone who doesn't know, 75 hard was a like 75-day project invented by Andy Frisella, who and it entails basically two 45-minute workouts, one of which has to be outside, 10 pages of reading of a nonfiction book, drinking a gallon of water, taking a progress picture every day, and I might be missing one more thing. Oh yeah, no alcohol. That's not a problem for me. Neither is the reading. A lot of it is just like stuff I do anyway, but it's just kind of nice to, have this list of options for my day that I can pick from that I know are all going to be productive. And I added some things in for myself too, like 30 minutes of meditation and at least an hour of writing. I'm going to start taking Sundays to not touch my phone. So try to be more present, even though I'm not able to do the thing that I most want to be doing, which is running. And so it is really just a way to like help guide myself toward being productive and like having ways to feel good about myself, as opposed to kind of sitting and, lapsing into the negative thought process that would tend to accompany an injury. I had about 3 days of feeling miserable before I kind of told myself, I was like, okay, you're done with this. Like, this is where you're at. You just have to accept it. And then it was like, what's next?
So in my mind goes into two different directions with that. And I know I've listened to several of your podcasts. I know you did the one with Cam Hanes, which I really dove into your background and kind of, I thought it was a fantastic, looked like like you guys had a fun time, but it was a great interview that dived into a lot of your history and reading. I wondered, one thing was just, have you read or heard of the book With Winning in Mind?
I haven't.
It's a fantastic book. And it's about a precision shooter, which I was a Marine Corps Scout Sniper and a recon team, like way back in the day. And my old marksmanship instructor, I was kind of catching up with him and he recommended it to me. And I went, he's like, this is my favorite book. And so I picked it up. And this guy was a Olympic shooter. And he said his whole goal was winning a gold medal in the Olympics. And he said his most depressing time ever was the day after he won the gold medal.
Yeah.
And it was
that makes
his
sense.
wife. He just, didn't have any goals, have anything going. So the moment I saw you pick this up, I was like, oh man, you clearly have that mindset. Like, we're moving. We have to have something. We have a plan. But yeah, that's really amazing. What do you think people could take away from that? Because I think far too many people don't have game plans during their day. Like, we don't wake up, we don't have game plans. I mean, how do you think that correlates even without injury?
I think, well, there's a lot there to unpack. First of all, I just typed into Google with winning in mind, so that'll be a book that I order here pretty soon. Just a kind of interesting little connection there is there's like probably some genetic propensity in my history to be interested in that sort of thing, because my biological grandfather, who I never met, he died in Vietnam, but he was a marksman and was a couple months away from competing in the Olympics when he died. So there's, an interest I'd have in that just from a, family interest perspective. But anyway, that totally makes sense that he would say to me that he would say the day after winning a gold medal is like the hardest time, because achievement isn't what we think it is. It's not actually something that's going to make us satisfied with what we've done in life, where we are at in life. Achievement is this tiny ephemeral moment that you can appreciate it for what it is for a short time, but then it's gone. It's like gone forever. Like, you can sort of go back and be like, oh yeah, remember when I crossed the finish line at Cocodona, how good that felt? But you're getting this like 2% sliver of that feeling, and achievement is just it's gone forever. So it's like you have to love the process, and if you don't love the process, achievement's actually not going to really get you anything that lasts and is eternal in life at all. So that's just a lesson that I think doesn't intuitively arrive until you feel it for yourself. But in terms of arranging your day, I think the way that I would analogize is like, if you've got if you're following a diet and you go to a restaurant, like, the mindset I've always had when I've been on a strict diet is like, okay, I don't even have options for my literal menu. If you're gluten free, pizza and pasta aren't on your menu. And so if you think about the way you arrange your diet, or a diet, then you can think about the way you're arranging your day from an option of life choices. So that's like why 75 Hard providing a structure is so good, is because you just have this list of choices that you all know. Like, I'm going to push this button and I'm going to be productive in this way. I'm going to push this button and I'm going to be productive in another way. And if you can arrange your day to have only a menu of fulfillment, like, your day doesn't, to me, I think of like video games as the classic example of kind of meaningless distraction. There's probably gray areas where if you're like playing with friends, you're spending time with community, that could be different. But there's no time that I've like felt worse about myself than the few times in my life I've just like sat in front of a TV and played video games for multiple hours. So that's just me though. But if you arrange your daily menu so that you don't have the options to do the things that are going to make you feel like you wasted time, like doom scrolling on Instagram, or any of that sort of time wasting activity, then you can just pick from the list of things that you might describe as productive, healthy, fulfilling, like however you want to think of it. And so that's typically how I try to picture arranging my days, whether I'm healthy or not.
And so this just made a natural shift into, this is now my menu for this current season that I'm in right now.
For sure. I mean, for a while, all that was on my menu was for the 3 days of being miserable. All that was on my menu was sitting and thinking about all the things that I'm not going to be able to do this summer. And so, when you get stuck in that, it can be pretty hard to get out of it. So it's like it's a tough place to be. But ultimately, what I think in moments of where you're down or moments where you're up, the character of your thoughts and what you like, the story you're telling yourself about your day, is actually what affects your mood and whether or not you're going to be thinking positively or negatively about like the experience you're having. And so if the character of your thoughts is just like purely negative, it's like, what can you do to change that? And most of the time, it is just accepting the circumstance and understanding that you have this like tiny sliver of control. And so focus on that. It's like, that's the lesson. That's a big lesson with ultras, and it's a big lesson with life. It's like, if you can control 2% of the variables, that's all you need to worry about. And the other 98% will take care of itself.
That's just beautiful life advice, just in general.
Yeah.
Focus on the controllables, and the rest is going to do its thing. I think, and with that too, so many people wake up every day and wonder why they're struggling in certain areas. But we check. I mean, I like when people ask me questions, like when I'm facilitating a training, one of the things I check out, well, what are your daily habits? Like, what are you doing every day? Let's walk through a typical day. And usually there is no plan. Like, we don't have a plan, and we end up grabbing the quickest, easiest thing to fill our time. You know, you mentioned video games, doom scrolling.
How many of those people wake up and immediately open their phones and just start having their day dictated to them by algorithmic content? I can't think of anything worse than doing that. Or like you wake up and you turn on CNN or Fox News, you turn on cable news, and you're just like given this not even a slow drip, but just constant drip of outrage. Like it's and that's what you're going to get with a lot of algorithms and everything like that. And it's like, so I mean, simple hygiene wise, just don't look at your phone for the first hour or the last hour of the day. Like if you could be a relative addict to the phone slot machine, as it were, in the middle parts of your day. But I think if you have like reasonable hygiene surrounding it, like that's going to set you up much better than if you're just like letting it take control of you from the very start.
Oh, and I love the slot machine reference. What a great tie-in, because that's what it is. And it's so powerful too. I mean, your mind is just waking up, and to get bombarded first thing is, I mean, that's going to dictate the majority of your day. So I love that. Just
totally.
So are you in the practice of, you don't use your phone for the first hour of your day?
Yeah, I mean, my phone is my alarm. So the only time that I touch it the first hour is to turn off my alarm. And then I typically, almost always, there's like a few exceptions, there's some alpine starts that happen in the summers when I'm fully healthy that are like 2 a.m. and I wake up at 2 and I'm moving at 2:30. So this doesn't happen on those days. But typically I give myself a full hour to read and drink 2 cups of coffee. So I'm sitting in my recliner right now, and this is where I sit for the first hour of my day. I open my back door, listen to the birds wake up, and it's nice. It's like sets you up for the day. Whatever I'm reading is often, I mean, I think of reading as like a solid mixture of entertainment plus like self-improvement, and so you're learning, you're engaging with another human's thoughts, whether it's literature or nonfiction, and it's just like a good way to set yourself up for success. And then I go straight from an hour of reading, and right now it's 30 minutes of meditation, but typically I do 10 minutes if I have other things to do that day. And so then I'm just like, I've gotten my relaxation time, I'm awake, the coffee has taken effect, and then I'm like mentally stable to kind of get ready and attack whatever I'm doing that day.
That sounds like just an amazing way to start your day, period. And so when you have those early runs, though, you said those don't happen. You just kind of hit up and get on and go.
Oftentimes I will get up extra early to allow myself to like take the time to still do that. And like, but there's certain days where like, if I'm doing something huge in the mountains, it's going to take like 10 hours and 6 of those hours is going to be above tree line. It's like, I'm trying to be below tree line by noon. So, to avoid thunderstorms. And so you're like, you're just constricted by time. And so that's really the only time that, that morning routine doesn't happen. And I mean, I think it's worth acknowledging up front that like living the life of a professional athlete, like I'm like very fortunate with the way I'm able to arrange my days. I don't yet have kids. So like I can have this morning routine free from many obligations, which I'm sure that lots of people can't have. But what most people probably can do is not look at their phone. Like even if you have to wake up and be productive right away, you could wake up and not be productive and distracted.
Yeah. I mean, that shows the wisdom that you have, because I know for me, when I didn't have kids, I did not know the level of difficulty that it was. And so the fact that you recognize that speaks volumes to the wisdom that you have, and just acknowledging that there are things you can do. And that gets back to that 2% of control that you were talking about. Like, what can you control? I find one thing that I've gotten the habit of on the weekends is just drop them out, and very intentionally. Phone's my alarm as well, but I like to let my wife sleep in. She's been working. I'm usually traveling during the week, so let her sleep in whatever she's been working the hardest all week with our kids when I'm out traveling. But if I leave my phone on my nightstand and I just go make breakfast with my kids, I find I'm so much more in tune and present with just, and I look back at what did I get distracted with? Was that worth it? Or was it that 20 extra minutes with my kids worth it?
Totally.
So I love that you're able to point that out and identify it. I'm curious to ask, when you sit down to read, it sounds like you're in a chair, you're reading actual tangible physical books, or what's your preferred?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I much prefer a physical book, to the point where we need to buy more bookshelves to fit the books that I have in my house currently. So yeah, no, I really love the feeling of holding a book in my hand, and just like I especially with philosophy or nonfiction, and certain literature, like if it's Dostoevsky or Cormac McCarthy or something, and you're trying to like parse what's being said, like writing in the margins, and you can't really do that on a Kindle. And then there's also this, I buy a lot of used books, and so I dog ear my pages, and I love the feeling of like getting to a place in a used book that I purchased and getting to a spot where someone else dog eared a page that read that book, and then I feel like I'm connecting not only with the author's experience of writing the book, but like the whoever it was that first owned this book's experience of reading it. It's like, oh, we paused at the same place. Like, did you pause because this is the time in your day where you had to move on? Did you pause because that was a really thoughtful chapter and now you're thinking about things? Like, so there's something like very human and tangible, about a physical book that you just don't get with the digital side of things. I'm not making really a value claim. It's just it's a preference claim for sure.
Oh, I speaks volumes for. I love that you mentioned the connection to the author, but also the used book connection to who last read it, which I had never thought about in that way. And that's I just got actually the used book that just showed up from thrift books, and it had a this little receipt thing shoved in a page, but it was clearly somebody that had read it before. And now I want to go back and see if I can find the page. Like, was that a placeholder for an important page or a random place to shove something when you're boarding an airplane? Like, I'd never thought about that. That's a very cool connection. And
yeah, it's nice. I used to kind of be into collecting records too, and it was the same thing there, where like you get this used thing that somebody went out and intentionally spent their money on. I accidentally bought one time a copy of a second printing of the Beatles' first album, Please Please Me, and it was a second printing from England in like 1964 or something like that. And it was I bought it for like $30. It's worth like 350 or something like that. I had no clue what I was buying, but I just like imagine the human experience. Like, that person's going to buy their first ever Beatles album, and now I'm getting to hold this physical object that probably brought them so much joy in the moment. And like that type of connection through time, it's similar to why I love ultrarunning. It's like it's this like ancestral human feeling that you don't get from a lot of our modern kind of screen-based digital interaction,
And it brings a lot of clarity to it. And before, going down that thread, it made me think. I want to ask too, because we had this one guy that we knew in the military that he was a civilian. And one day he just hit us up. He's like, "Hey, will you come show me how to clean my guns?" And we're like, "Okay." And we went over to his house, and he had all the tons of guns. This older guy just had collected them up, and they all had original pack. Not a single one of them had been fired. Like, they had brand new packing. Like, we opened them up, and I was like, not a single one of this wasn't even used. None of these were. And it totally, like, completely, I know we're going back to the books now, but do you ever open up a book and like, I don't know, this one ever got enjoyed. It says used, but this one was off on the shelf unused. So it just, made me think of that reference. But so I want to ask you too, though, like, being a big and avid reader, what's your favorite? If you had top 3, top 5 books, I know that's a tough thing, but what are your favorite books?
Blood Meridian is my favorite novel. Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy. I think it's the best novel written in the English language, and I'm willing to like die on that hill forever. Um, so that's my like number one recommendation. Uh, I recently finished a book called Determined by Robert Sapolsky. One of my like little obsessions philosophically is that I don't believe in free will, and we don't have to go down this rabbit hole. Like there's plenty of me talking about that on other podcasts. We can go down that rabbit hole if you want to, but it kind of gets long-winded. But Determined is a really good book that explores both like the physical processes of how like so much about our world is determined by things that we have no clue like what's going on in the background, like easy example, um in sentencing, like in a courtroom, if a judge hasn't eaten for a certain number of hours, like they're likely, some giant percentage likely, more likely to give a severe prison sentence for the same crime to the same person, than if they had eaten an hour before. So it's like there's so much that determines the way that we think we are reasoning. But anyway, that's one of my favorite nonfiction books I've read recently. And then for philosophy, there's just like nothing better than Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Um, that's another one of those situations where like Roman emperor has the power of like uh divine right emperor, but is this like incredibly down to earth person writing in a journal that he never meant to be published, and so you're getting to interface with the private thoughts of someone from, 2,000 years ago almost, who got to witness like plagues and wars across the Roman Empire. Like he's basically where you can like start. Okay, the Roman Empire is declining with Marcus Aurelius, and the like equanimity and poise that he somehow manages to show through that is just like beyond what seems like we should be capable of. And so learning from that, I think, is really cool. So those are the three I've got. You got one fiction, one nonfiction, one philosophy.
Okay, well, I just pulled up Blood Meridian. I'm going to grab the other two. You had me at best book ever written in the English language, which is fantastic. I mean, I'm going to have to check it out. And meditations, great. What's your favorite takeaway from meditations?
I mean, be the rock that the wave crashes upon is kind of the classic Stoic metaphor, like you want to be able to take blows and enjoy the ups and downs of life for what they are. So like my big takeaway is if you picture your moods as, a sine wave basically, and you have highs and troughs, you want to compress that sine wave. I do think like a fair criticism of the Stoics in general is that they tend to be a little bit joyless. But I think that if you can compress your sine wave to where you still have highs and lows, but it's not this like near manic, like, wow, everything's great, everything's terrible, everything's great, everything's terrible, and you can just kind of be more in that middle zone. That's the big takeaway from meditations, is just allowing the natural process to take place without giving too much validity to either the good things or the bad things.
Mm. So be the rock. And it makes me think, and very, very curious, how do you take that into ultras? I mean, you're going into the storm when you go run the 200-mile race. I mean, that's, you're going to the storm. So how do you take that mentally into those races?
I mean, there's a lot. The controllable aspect that we've already talked about with general life is something that you have to take into ultras too, and that was a learning process. I think in a race, in a 200-mile race, maybe you control 30% of the variables, let's say. So focus on that sliver, and then I think it's with the highs and lows piece. There's been 200-mile races where I haven't gone through lows, but that's like the exception as opposed to the rule. So you want to assume that you're going to have some pretty significantly low moments. You're going to have the thought of, why am I doing this? Like typically it's the second night for me. I just get at some point I'm like, what in my life? Like what series of life decisions led me to be running through the woods at 2 a.m. and I've slept 0 minutes in the last, 40 hours? Like, what am I doing? And so you have to know that you're going to get there. And it's just this like learning process of allowing those thoughts to come and go and then believing that you can make it out of the low. So like at Cocodona, for instance, when things started to go wrong for me, I entered one of the lowest points I've ever been at in a race, especially a race that I didn't end up DNFing and not finishing. But there was just like you have to believe that there's light at the end of the tunnel, and so riding that low and experiencing that trough is just part of the journey, and knowing that it doesn't last forever. Like everything is temporary. And that's another big lesson from the Stoics, is that just stuff doesn't last. And so if you can take that lesson into the low moments, it allows you to deal with them more gracefully, thoughtfully, efficiently from a more practical standpoint.
Mm. Do you find yourself taking those, because that would apply to those high moments too then, especially during the races, but in life, do you take that same level of thinking into those high moments of the race?
Yeah, I think so. I think letting yourself get intoxicated by the high moments isn't the way to go. I think appreciating the high moments, and more I'm just leaning into gratitude. Like I have a draft on my Substack called Gratitude is the Master Virtue. And I think that that is where my head's at more and more. And so it's like if you can, if you picture the process of being in a low, whether it's life or an ultra, and you are like just swimming through the depth at that point. And then you get to a high, it's like you want to enjoy it. You want to let yourself take the deep breaths. You want to let yourself feel the sun rising. That's often something that will usher in a little bit more of a high in one of these races. You want to let yourself feel all of that joy, but you also want to know that it's temporary. It's sort of like I think death gives life meaning to some degree or another, and I think the lows give the highs meaning. But knowing that they're temporary allows you to actually appreciate them more. And so it's like you don't want to be chasing peak experiences. Like that's not the way to live your life, because then you're just a dog chasing cars and you don't know what to do and you get there. It's like if you're living in the present moment, you are more able to feel the gratitude that you should be feeling in the high moments, and more able to see the light at the end of the tunnel in the low moments. So I do think like the equanimity piece applies whether or not you are struggling or whether or not you're doing really well.
Well, and you mentioned, I mean, the dog chasing cars and approaching that in an ultra. And I love that takeaway, just to tie back to what you were sharing earlier about being intentional about your morning too. I mean, you can chase an easy high of feeling like you're, cable news, great example, but you get an instant, like, you get a high from that. You feel like it's there, or you could take the more neutral road. So I love to see that practice in your running as in your day-to-day life. So one thing, because I listen to a lot of audiobooks when I'm running, and that's when I find I get a lot of reading in. Not necessarily preferred method, but just that's what I do. What do you do when you're running on your training runs or even in races? What do you listen to? Or
Almost
nothing at
always,
all?
almost always nothing at all. So most of the time I'm
Mhm.
running on trails, and I want to be able to hear what's around me. If I'm in the mountains, I'd prefer to hear the bear uh, crashing off in the woods than not. But in races, like if I'm by myself and I'm running in the middle of the night, I might listen to some music out loud. Very infrequently, I will listen to podcasts. Sometimes if it like where I live, if it rains, I can't really go run on too many trails because it's all going to be muddy. And so sometimes I'll do a road run and I'll let myself listen to a podcast. If I feel really unmotivated on a day that I need to go out and train, I'll allow myself to listen to music on that run to just like give myself a little extra reason to get out the door. But no, most of the time, first of all, I find that my thoughts are often pretty entertaining. So like running is kind of when I figure out like, oh, what's the next thing I want to write about? Oh, I'm having this problem in life. This is my time to solve it. And then two, it's like I just love being on the trails. So it's like I want to experience the sound of my feet on sandstone and feel the winds running through my hair and all of those things. And if like that that is interrupted by the process of listening to anything. And so most of the time I'm going pretty raw with the with headphones. But yeah, no, if I do listen to something, it's mostly going to be music. And oftentimes in a race, I'll save it for when I need it. And it's like, let's use music as a drug in that instance.
Mm. Very intentionally placed. And that makes a lot of sense. Actually, the moment you said being on a trail, whenever I can make it up into the foothills or up in the mountains, for that reason, I'm not listening to anything. But for whatever reason, I don't know why it doesn't apply. But I do a lot of road running, just traveling a lot, and that's when I end up just checking out with a book in and listening. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, road running is less engaging. I mean, so that it makes sense for sure. But when I'm at my best, I'm doing very little road running.
Okay. Well, and well, given what you do, I mean, the Cocodona, I'm still blown away by the numbers of that. I know all the 200s have just extreme elevation, but it's close to 40,000 vertical. I mean, you're climbing a lot. So I would imagine every run you're covering quite a bit of vert included.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, what's ironic about Cocodona is that compared to the races I like best, like Cocodona is flat. Like the first 30 you get 10,000 feet of climbing, but then the rest of it is like far too much running for me. So like
Okay.
my favorite race is the Bigfoot 200, which is 50 miles shorter, but has 45,000 feet of climbing. So it's like a lot more up and down in a more compressed amount of miles. And so like the end of Cocodona, for instance, when you get to the last 50 miles, it's just like all douche grade, just like slightly uphill stuff that you have to run, but you desperately want to walk. And that is my least favorite thing to be doing in a race ever. It's terrible.
Just like having to run up a slight uphill, or is it just specifically because it's at the end of the race?
I mean, it's mostly because when you're really tired. Like sometimes running
Yeah.
up a little bit of an up is actually sort of fun when you feel fresh. But when you're tired and you just have to force yourself to be running like 10:30s, 11-minute miles, when really like the only thing that your body wants to do is walk, that's one of the hardest things to do. And that's like really what separates people who finish these things quickly from people who don't.
So that's one of the separators. And so how do you do that? Like, what's the secret to mentally saying it's time to engage?
You just have to be able to sit on the edge for a really, really long time. Like you just get better and better at just like holding yourself like right at the point where everything's about to break down. And I mean, things did break down for me in Cocodona, so maybe I was too far, maybe I was over the edge. But it's like there's this mental muscle that you have to flex to keep yourself running, and it's trainable. So I have been. It was something I specifically worked on in my training block for Cocodona, was just running things that I didn't want to run, which during training runs takes the form of something where that is like steep enough that in a race I would definitely be walking it. But it's just about flexing that muscle where like, I'm at the end of a 120-mile week. I'm at the end of my 30-mile long run, and I have a 2-mile climb to do that I'm gonna force myself to run. And then you can translate that in the race to, okay, I have 40 miles where I'm gonna very slowly climb 3,000 feet. Like I have to run the whole thing. And that was my plan going into the race. And it worked until it didn't. But yeah, it's hard to describe, but it does just feel like you're sort of like if you use the metaphor of hitting the wall, it's like you're just like you're like on a treadmill with your head against the wall the whole time. You're never quite hitting it with your whole body, but you're just like right there. And yeah, it sucks, but you get used to it, you get better at it, and it is super rewarding. It's like this is what you're there for. That's the test, and you just have to embrace that moment
Mm.
or moments, hours.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, it's a long, long moment that you're
Yeah.
describing. The long moment, but it's interesting too. Pulling this thread back from just the difference right here. I'll say amateur runner, professional runner. You know, listening to stuff while I'm checking out, you know what I mean, while I'm running, and you're intentionally focused on the mental side of how's this going to feel at mile 210 or 220, and really flexing that mental muscle, because it's more than just getting the miles in, mentally prepping for those moments. So it's pretty amazing that you do that. How do you sit on the edge like that? And how do you know that you're not, I know you said kind of went a little over, which I think you still absolutely crushed this last race. I know not the end outcome, obviously with an injury, but how do you sit on that edge and know? I mean, think about an amateur runner, or how would you coach somebody to know that it's time to keep pushing, or you might want to hold back?
So there's no good formula for this. It's like I can't translate what I'm feeling in my body, my mind to like what you're feeling. But what I tell athletes that I'm coaching is I would prefer you blow up and have a horrible last third of the race than get to the finish line and have anything left in the tank. So I think you just have to be willing to take the risk up front of, okay, I might be mortgaging the last, let's say 100 miles is easy to do the math. Like I might be mortgaging my last 30 miles in order to try to hit my A goal, which is whatever time, whatever execution, it doesn't matter. But it's like you just have to be willing to take the risk up front that you could be signing a warrant for you to death march your last 50K. And if you're not willing to do that, that's okay. It's like finishing the races is a fine goal. It's like you don't have to be pushing to an empty tank every single time. In my head, I would say, why not? Like that's unless you're like doing a specific project where you have like a series of races and you have to be ready for the next one, blah, blah, blah. It's like there's certain instances, but if you're not, like, you're there to test yourself. Why not test yourself to your full capability? So I think it gets easier to know the more you race any specific distance. So I would have real trouble knowing where the edge is if I was running a fast 50K, because I don't do those. But in a 200 miler, I've got lots of experience at this point, and so I have an idea of like what is possible here, like what is going to be sustainable, and so I sort of know what I need to be feeling in that moment. And obviously, with training and year by year, you're trying to get a little bit better. So it's not like these races get easier because you just start running faster. So if anything,
Mhm.
maybe they get a little bit harder as you get better. But yeah, this is not a particularly this isn't an answer that like people can totally go just apply, but it is this process of experimentation where like if you're unwilling to take risks, like you will not be able to find your balance, which is okay. You don't need to take the risks. I'm not, again, these aren't value judgments. This is just if you want to be on the side of like, hey, let's empty the tank every time. And so ultimately, like and I have made mistakes in previous 200-mile races where I've gone out too fast and all those sorts of things. And I'm sure that at some point in my career, I'm going to make that mistake again, and I will end up having the worst last third of a race of all time. But you just have to be, if you can't accept that as a possibility, you will not reach your full potential.
Mm. But I appreciate where you went with it, because my mind was thinking pushing yourself on the back end, and you started at the front end of
Yeah.
where, like, that's where it starts, literally when the start line happens. So with that potential, are you coaching people to go like, I love like heart rate, just to going off a heart rate? Is that what you push it off of, or are you flexing into just really pushing your limits all around? Like, how do you know what that looks like for somebody? Let's say you're coaching.
So I think of all numbers data as all of that should be used to inform your RPE. I think you want to you want to get to a point where your RPE meter in your head is good enough that you should be able to guess your heart rate at whatever effort you're at, and you should be right 95% of the time. And so I encourage most of the people that I work with to, in a race, forget about all the numbers. Go purely based on feel. Like, yeah, sure, there's going to be some like racing in here. Like in Cocodona, did I run the first 50K a little faster than I wanted to because I was with Rachel and Joe? And like, yes, okay, so those things are going to happen in a race. And that's fine. But for the most part, I think if you're paying attention to your heart rate and it happens to be a little bit higher, or it happens to be a little bit lower, like this is just a way to like screw up your brain and screw up your head. or something really long. I think there's probably differences when you get like but to 100K. Like if you're around like a race that's going to take 12 hours as opposed to 60, there's differences here. But I'm working with a lot of people who are doing hundreds and 200s and above. And I think that you want to go by feel. And so during training, I really encourage people to A, play that game with their heart rate, and then B, trying to just really dial in like, what is my I can run forever pace? What does that feel like? It's like it doesn't matter about the number because you could be on technical terrain, you could be on easy terrain, you could be on up, down, uphill, downhill. And it's like you want your forever pace to have a certain feeling. And if you can find that, like that's the sweet spot for running a 200 or 100, anything that's going to take over a day, really. And so I am much more holistic in that sense as opposed to being super data oriented because I think I know people who get their heads messed with by data, like if especially like there's like sleep stuff, if you're measuring your HRV overnight and you get a bad score in the morning, like do you actually feel bad or are you letting the number tell you that you feel bad? And I think that more often than not, in my anecdotal experience working with people, it's the latter. It's like they're letting the number dictate how they feel as opposed to the other way around.
That's a conversation me and my wife have pretty frequently where you'll get your wake up, see your sleep scores. Like, I feel great. Watch says I didn't sleep great, but I feel great. And then the flip side, It's like says like I think I had like my highest sleep score ever on my little Garmin watch was, I don't know, I think it was like a 96 or something. I was like, for me, I'm not seeing that. Maybe for others that's common, but I just felt groggy and like it just wasn't my A game. But so one common thing, and so I could definitely see that relationship to having your device dictate how you're feeling, which seems to be a theme that's coming up for devices, heart rate monitors, screens.
Yeah.
a common thing that I hear from people, and I'm just personally curious. And I say for amateur runners, it's common for your first 100. People will say you should walk every uphill for the first 50 or 60 miles, and that's a common thing that I've heard from many people versus kind of pushing the needle. And obviously, it's a broad spectrum of what was your training plan like, all those things. But what thoughts do you have with that of walking every uphill versus really intentionally kind of pushing it a little bit on the first 50 or 60 miles?
I think to begin with, I think there's nothing universal that you can say to apply to a 100-mile race with varying individuals because certain people are going to have done 200Ks before their first 100-miler. Certain people, like me, I'd done a 50-miler and a marathon before my first 100-miler. So, like, you're going to you could have people doing with a lot of experience. You could have people with no experience. You could have people who their first 100-miler, they're going for an ambitious goal. I work with a guy whose first 100-miler, he ran an 18:06 and on a course of 12,000 feet of climbing. So obviously he's not walking the ups in a lot of cases, So it's so dependent on like what that person wants to achieve. For many people who are attempting to finish the race, and that's like the goal period. It's like, yeah, the ultra running rule of if you can't see the top of the hill, walk it. Like that makes sense. I think that's a reasonable rule of thumb for many people, but for many others it's not. And so I just don't think there's this like universal piece of advice, which is part of the reason that with coaching there's like no copy and paste plans. It's like there's no way to take exactly what this person is doing for their race and give it to another person. So it's just it's so much about what that individual's goals are
and
what the race looks like.
Yeah, well, very true. Also different. That's why.
Yeah, if someone's running hard rock and that's their first 100 or Uray or something, it's like, yeah, you should probably walk all the ups.
Uray is, I've got that dog-eared for a year or two. It looks just brutal. It looks like such a brutal 100-mile. It's over 40,000 in 100 miles. I mean, it's
Yeah, it's 42,102 miles. Yeah, if you should
and
do it, if you should do it next year. I'll be doing it next year, so we could go out there
doing
and
the
suffer
next
together.
just go what time of year is it? Is it in
This year is July 17th, so it's middle of July. It's typically the
okay.
weekend after Hard Rock.
Okay. So actually, and I got super lucky. I would actually do it next year, but I got into Western States 100 for next year.
Oh, awesome!
So
Congrats.
thank you. I got a random, they do a little charity raffle ticket thing that I was at the lottery last year. I bought it. My name got pulled and I was like,
Nice, that's cool.
well, that's the plan or else I
Yeah,
would. So
for
I've
sure.
been kind of trailing it out, but yeah, maybe I'll come. We'll book we usually, our family always spend a week in Uray. I'll see if we can come book it in. We'll watch you. We'll look at you from the hot springs, watch you running it. So
Yeah, that'll be fun. That's my one of my favorite places on the planet. One of my favorite races. Like the community around it is awesome. The finish line is just two orange cones in the middle of a field. It's great.
well, I find there's not a ton of stuff about, like, it seems like it's a very unknown course still. Like you don't see
Yeah,
a lot of stuff about it.
it's relatively low key as far as ultras go nowadays. It's like one of the more old school races, and I have no real preference for like the two different sides of the spectrum there in terms of races. You know, it's like whether it's Cocodona with cameras or it's Uray with nothing. But the community, like the people who put on the race and everyone who comes there is really special. So plus it's just so beautiful and so difficult that it's like it holds a place in my heart for sure.
And you've done it once before?
Yeah, I did it in 2022.
Okay, and just
No,
was it just
2021. Sorry.
sufferfest the whole way? Because I've just seen it. I mean, elevation just looks like, I mean, it's up, down for 14 big climbs.
Yeah, I mean, there's basically no flat. Like it's like if you took out all of the flat runnable chunks of hard rock, then you have Uray. So yeah, but and there was plenty of suffering. I mean, I was much worse. I was not particularly well prepared for that race when I did it. In the sense, I mean, I came third. I did fine. It was early on in my career. You know, there's like a million things that I would do differently now. But yeah, it was hard. I had I didn't go to the hospital for it, but I definitely had like some rhabdo afterwards. Like I've never been that dehydrated in my life. Like my pee was coffee colored. It was so bad. Um, so it was brutal, but it was a good experience.
Just a good experience. A little rhabdo. Just
A little bit.
just a fun weekend away. Just well, man, I'm going to be rooting for you out there with that one because I just love it. It seems like it. I think I've watched one or two videos on it, and they're personal videos. Like it's not one of those high polished. I haven't found it yet. Maybe it's out there, but we just kind of it makes me think of what ultra running probably was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Of it just thrown together, and it just looks like an absolute blast. Like you said, the two cones at the end is great. So I was going to ask you, and we're kind of feathering around. I know right now, I'm curious to ask, you just had surgery. How long are you out for right now? And what are you got goal Uray next year. What is
Yeah.
it? What does all of that look like for you?
Uray was going to happen this year along with a race in Europe called Tour de Jean, which is a 208-mile race with 86,000 feet of climbing. So it's basically Uray back to back. And so that just got shifted to next year. So those two goals are just transplanted to 2027.
That hurt me to hear you say that. That's
yeah, it's crazy. There's a part of that race that's a 19-mile descent with 10,000 feet of descending. It's like I can't even really picture what that looks like in my head. You know, like how do you prepare your quads to run 19 miles downhill? The answer is go over there and train on the course, which is what I'm going to do. But
okay.
Anyway, my 2026 back half of the year just got moved to 2027, which is fine. So Uray and Tour. But yeah, just had surgery, not this past Wednesday, but the Wednesday before. So I'm in a splint right now. I'm non-weight bearing at least until Monday. Monday, I'm hoping that I get out of a splint and into a boot. I am I'm very tired of being in a splint. Not being able to move my ankle is starting to really bug me. Like I'm like waking up in the middle of the night with like this intense urge to point my right toes, and I just like can't do it. So it's like starting to get mentally tiresome. But that's all a part of the package. So I'm hopefully from the date of surgery, I can start running again, slowly reentry into running 3 to 4 months. So ideally it'll be on that 3 month side, but who knows? I'm just kind of accepting whatever happens there. Obviously we talked a little bit about like 75 hard at the beginning. I'm doing that, but not doing anything to bug my ankle. So trying to stay active as intelligently as I can. I mean, I'm sure I'll be able to bike before I can run. So whenever I can bike, I'll start getting outside and doing that. But yeah, I really don't know exactly what everything will look like. I'm going to start PT next Wednesday for my ankle, and I think that will probably be a significant process that will involve some amount of discomfort as I like attempt to loosen up. How I can't even imagine how stiff muscles have to be when they haven't moved for 12 days, So
Yeah.
it'll all be kind of interesting. But yeah, in the meantime, it's just focusing on doing what I can to stay sane from an exercise perspective. And then, like I mentioned at the beginning, it's like I've been doing lots of writing. So I've got plenty of other goals to focus on that I'm
Okay.
attempting to fill my time with.
All right. So 3 months back to running, hopefully some cycling sooner. And then
Yep.
you, Ray, what was that? The other, I don't want to
It's called
mispronounce
Tour
it.
de Jean. Yeah, it's
Tour de
it's a
Jean.
208-mile race in Italy.
Okay. I've heard it referenced. It actually ran. It was actually my first ultra that I did a couple years ago. And somebody, I don't know where he posted. I remember, I don't know where I was, but in any case, I saw this guy. I think it was on Instagram. He had posted up on UTMB. It was the Kodiak race up
Hmm.
in Big Bear, and some dude just posted up, "Hey, I'm coming from Italy. Does anybody have any extra poles?" And I was like, "Bro, like I'm flying in. I have an extra set. I'll bring you some poles." And like, so like it was a super cool thing. But I gave him these poles, and we just kind of chatted for a little bit. And then I remember I linked up at the end of the race and got him back, and all he kept talking about was like, "Oh, these are so easy to run. This is so runnable." And like, he was so happy with how flat. I'm like, dude, I just got smoked, and you were just happy as can be.
Yeah,
So I've just heard it's just the steepest climbs over there. I mean, just
yeah.
so you're going to go spend some time there and train on it?
Yeah, the plan will be so my plan this year, so the race is September 13th this year, and my plan was to get there like August 15th or so and spend like my last 2 weeks of training and taper, like just getting accustomed to life and getting on the course. And so I'll probably do something similar next year.
Okay. Have you, and I don't know if there's this secret, chat room website that all the pro runners go talk to. So, but I made me think of like Jim Walmsley, his commitment to going to UTMB and living there for a season. Is that
Hmm.
something that you've communicated with other people that have done that to like set up a game plan, or are you just kind of just going to see what this looks like?
Yeah, I think well, like the only way to train for, that 19-mile descent is to go do it. Like we just
Yeah.
in the continental United States, like that doesn't exist. So like how how can I make that happen? So that's really like the conclusion. And I know a few people who've done it and attempted it. And so and I also just think like with travel, jet lag, it's like if I travel and I get sick while traveling, like I'll have the time to not be sick for the race. I'm a very routine driven person, like we've talked about. So I want to get into a routine with the Airbnb and wherever I'm staying and all those sorts of things. No American male has ever podiumed at the race. So, and I think there's a reason for that. And I think part of it is the climbing and descending being so. I mean, we have Uray is roughly half of Tour, but it's still shorter chunks of each climbing and descending at any given time. So I think to have the best chance of success, you really have to invest that time up front. And it's like, I'm not Jim Walmsley. I don't have the flexibility to go there for an entire race season, but I do have the flexibility to go there for about a month.
Okay. But and definitely not a comparison between obviously you and Jim. I just didn't know if y'all communicated or you know what I mean.
Sure.
Just like, what did you find as a best practice? Like, what does that look
Yeah.
like? Yeah.
So far as I know, there is not a master chat room for the pros, but there is each person's going to have their own individual network, and happily, I have a few friends who've run tour before.
Right. Yeah, you never know. But yeah, I actually I met a recon marine and also a sniper this week, and there is like a private Facebook group, so I think that was top of mind for me because that's kind of how you always hear people talk about it, but like that's how you can validate yourself is like you're not making this up. It's like it was that I think it's fresh top of mind for me. But doing U-Ray as a tune-up is insane to me. Like that's essentially just hit me. Like that's what it is. Like U-Ray is going to be your tune-up. Like that's going to be like your.
I mean, there's enough time between them that I think I can put a big effort into Array and be ready for tour. But hopefully, I will learn some things during Array that then I can apply to tour.
So why 200s? Like why that?
I'm not fast, so what do I have that makes me? What am I best at? And I think what I'm best at is the mental toughness side. I think as you get a marathon is basically a proxy for a VO2 max test, and as you get faster and faster at the hundreds, like what's Western States now? Kind of a proxy for a VO2 max test. Like I'm not saying there's no other factors involved, obviously, but I'm just super simplifying it and as kind of a metaphor here. Whereas the longer you go, you get further and further away from those like physical metrics. I still think that I'm I still think that I can't I'm not totally responsible for like my mental strengths either. I think a lot of that's genetic, a lot of that has to do with circumstance, blah blah blah. So it's not that I'm like separating what are genetic gifts and what aren't, but I think I'm separating the purely physical characteristics of a faster race to the what do we have over here for the multi-day race, because I think what so far seems to be the case with 200s is that your marathon time has very little to do with how well you're going to run a 200, and that's what I like most about them. Is it's like there's all these other variables. There's how you're going to handle sleep, there's your aid station efficiency, there's who is willing to hurt the most for the longest, like what we were talking about, like living on the edge for hours and hours at a time. And that is what led me to 200s, is just like, where do I have the best ability to compete? And I think it's at that distance.
When I don't want to go back down this road, but I struggle when you mention maybe your mental toughness is genetic, and maybe some of it is. However, I through work and just talking to a lot of high performers, it's a very trainable thing, and you very intentionally train your mind. I mean, it's very clear just speaking to you you put the work in with how you wake up, your routines of reading, your meditation, like that is a muscle that you train. And so anybody listening, I mean, you can train. I'm not saying they're going to get your mental toughness, but you put the work in there. I mean, that is the daily practice that you put in very intentionally, and it's impressive.
Sure,
but
I don't want to underwrite the work that can go into these things, whether it's me or somebody else. And I do think everything to one or another degree is trainable. But like for me personally, it's like when I was 3 years old, I was in swim lessons, and you like got patches for how far you were swimming. And so most of the people my age, I think, are probably getting the 200-meter patch, whatever. And I saw older kids getting a 1,500-meter patch. And so when I was 3, I was like, I'm gonna get that. And so I swam for 2 hours straight when I'm a 3-year-old to get my 1,500-meter patch. And like, who is doing that? Like it's not like my parents at that point had done any sort of training to be like, let's get our 3-year-old to be an endurance athlete, So I do think it's like that was just there, and I'm happy it was. And so there is obviously, like with anything, there's a mixture of proclivity, circumstance, and training that goes into it. But I definitely had that. There was something to do with willpower that was like the ingrained in me from the start.
Mm-hmm. Well, and not taking away anything of you, and like obviously a lot of innate talent and ability. That's insane. By the way, 1,500 as a 3-year-old is.
Yeah, it's a weird thing to
So,
do.
we're happy our kids can swim fairly well at 6 and 7. And I mean, if they do 3 laps, 75 yards is a big deal. So 1,500 at half the age is incredible. But finding the thing that where you excel, I think is very admirable. But here you're not fast. Like what, out of curiosity, like what would be, if you had to guesstimate, like what would be a marathon time for you?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I feel confident about saying I could run like a 2:45 if I really put
Okay.
effort into into a training block, but I don't know. I mean,
Okay.
it's just in by not fast, it's like there's a sliding scale here. So it's like, sure, am I faster than average? Yes, but when I run with, someone who is capable of a 2:20 marathon, and that like 2:20 doesn't even get you into the Olympic trials, but you run with
Yes.
someone like that, it's like there is not. I have no hope of getting there. Like
Yeah.
I could put in all the dedicated training forever, and that's just like not on the cards for me. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like I'm not fast in relation to as elite and sub elite speed. Like don't have it.
And that makes sense. I was curious. And by the way, too, like it almost hurt me to ask that question because one thing I personally love about just trail running in general is how you run like a road marathon or a road race. It's always like, how fast did you go? What was your pace? Whereas a
Hmm.
trail run, people are like, did you have fun?
Yeah,
How was
yeah.
it? And so I personally, it was just truly, I was like, wait a minute, pretty sure you would smoke most people in the speed test rate. But that actually connection makes a ton of sense comparatively on that sliding scale.
Hmm. Like,
So
I've always said that like there's a far, far bigger difference between me and a 2:20 marathoner than a middle of the pack 200 miler and me in terms of in terms of what our like peak marathon time is potential is, you know what I mean?
mhm,
Like it's like the gap between the 90th percentile and the 96th percentile is so enormous, as opposed to the gap between the 50th percentile and the 90th percentile in like any
right,
kind of exponential curve. Like that's just the way the math works out. And so that's how it feels when, you're like someone in my situation who's a professional athlete. You've just got a ton of friends around you who are like, professionals in another capacity, whether they're like, sub 100-mile ultra fast. It's like, yeah, I'm nowhere close to them. So it's just like everything's relative, and I'm talking about my own relative space because I don't want to say like I'm not fast and have someone who is slower than me like feel bad about that. That's like not my point I'm making here. It's just the like ceiling of potential is kind of what I'm
yeah.
talking about.
Well, and I think that's coming across. That's how I took it. I mean, even when you mentioned that, I think a lot of it would be some, um, I would say, humility inside of it too. Not a very braggadocious individual, even with everything that you've done. You seem to be very grounded with that. So that's how I took it. But I was just curious to unpack it because it's like, well, hold up, because I think you're pretty fast. So have you ever wanted to do 100 just to see what you could do? Or is it just, I know you did one, you've
Yeah,
done in the past, but I mean, have you ever been like, I wonder what that would look like if I just smoked it and just let loose?
for sure. I do want to do that, and I actually was signed up for Kodiak this year before I knew whether I was going to get into Tour de Jean. And then I was planning to roll Kodiak over to next year, but that is going to have to wait probably till 2028. But I'm interested in doing a race like that that's like got enough climbing, it's kind of runnable, because something flat like, am I interested how fast I could run Javelina? Like, yes. Is that going to do anything for me? No. It's like if I come, let's say I run even if I like I'd be aiming for sub 13:30 is kind of like my top end A goal for something like that, which is going to put me 12th, So it's
Right.
like my absolute best flat 100-mile time is like aiming for not elite. And so I do think there's just like there's like a career decision making process that goes into like is this going to do anything to like help me out in terms of like advancing me at all? Like, no. So that will probably happen at some point, but that's not like on the radar soon. A race like Kodiak would be. I do eventually want to run UTMB. I don't think I have the capability to compete for the win necessarily, but I think top 10 is totally a possibility. Hard Rock, I think I could win Hard Rock. So like there's certain 100 milers, like you get enough technicality, elevation gain, in my backyard where I'm like, I think I have enough advantages that if Kilian Jornet or Tom Evans wasn't in it that year, like maybe I'd have a shot. So it's like I it depends on the race, but yeah, it all is interesting to me. Where does my passion point? Definitely towards multi-days. It's like that's where I see my career going long term, and like the thing I want to do most is work toward something like the Appalachian Trail or the PCT, like going after the FKTs on those. Because what I like most about ultras, what I like most about the outdoors, whether it's a 6 hour long run, a multi-day race, whatever, is that you get to be mission oriented for that amount of time. Like I get to be doing one thing. And if you extend that reward cycle, like the process of finishing a 200-mile race, I think is double doubly rewarding as opposed to the process of running a 100-miler. Like it's that much better. I like them that much more. And
Mhm.
so I wonder, like, where's the cutoff for that? Like, does something that takes 40 days, is that going to feel 20 times better than something that takes 2 days? Like, maybe. Who am I to say it's not? So I'm interested in that more than I am dropping back down in distance. But I think both things can happen, because the nice thing about ultra running is that you actually have a pretty long career half-life with
Yeah.
being competitive. So yeah, I think all of it will happen at some point in the future. In what order, I do not know.
Yeah. Well, and it seems to be fascinating the career length at which people still compete. And that I heard it compared as the being on the rungs of the ladder, and that's what endurance is. And the longer you're on the ladder, the higher you can climb it, because you can only get so much better. And to your point, the careers last longer. And I also just want to say too, I think the thing that all of us fans watching you guys do your thing, Kilian versus Kilian on one course would be would be an epic thing. And
We would have to arrange it very specifically for me to have a shot there.
well, because he thrives in climbing though too, doesn't he? Like that's his.
Yeah, he is a unique case in just the sense of like, so after I won the Triple Crown in 2025, there was like this whole debate about 200s and 100 milers and stuff. And there were plenty of people saying like, oh, anyone who's a fast 100 miler could go up to 200 milers and just kick all the 200 people's ass. Like that was like
Mhm.
a theory that people had. I think there's almost no evidence to support that. But the exceptions to that rule are people like Kilian Jornet, who have done more like extensive projects like his States of Elevation thing. Like nobody else in the world could do that. And so it's like when you're talking about someone as talented as he is and who has like all the gifts, like he talked in a New York Times interview about the fact that he almost never needs to sleep more than 6 hours a night. So like, and he feels rested all the time. And so it's like, okay, so you have a VO2 max of 92, you're 5'6", and you weigh 120 pounds. You were raised in the Pyrenees. When you're 12, your dad took you on a 40-day ski mountaineering trip. Like, you talk about like all the circumstances to make the perfect athlete. He has 2 extra hours a day to train because he only sleeps 6 hours a day. It's like, you're not beating that. And so it's like, with someone like him, I think it's just a special case where he could do whatever he wants and you'd be foolish to bet against him. Like
Yeah.
it's just a unique individual that I think we all should just, instead of the, I get no inspiration from Kilian Jornet because it just seems so unattainable. It's more like, wow, it's like the conversation about like, have UFOs visited the planet? Like, I don't really care, but if they have, I find it interesting. I'm like, Kilian is
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
interesting to watch. Like, I'm excited to see what he does every time he does anything, because you're just like, this is the absolute pinnacle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think the Kilian versus Kilian does not work out well for me in almost any circumstance. Maybe
well,
if we do a high rocks, like
okay. everybody would watch it. And I'm sure he would be down for it too. Like he seems like a pretty
He
down to
does.
earth.
He seems great.
Yeah. But also, I mean, you mentioned have UFOs visited. It seems like they did, and they dropped off Kilian for all
Yeah,
of us
exactly.
to get to watch, to watch him do his thing. There's an interesting book called Stealing Fire, and I'm going to thread this back into something you shared earlier. But he talks about, I actually got, because I spent a couple years just researching and looking into PTSD for veterans specifically, and kind of things that help him out. But he references these things in life that take full brain power, where you don't focus. Skydiving is one of them, where you don't think about anything else when you jump out of an airplane. It's this. And one thing that I found talking to, she was my crew chief. She's a friend of mine. She actually was at Moab last year for her friend actually finished DFL of Moab last year, which was cool. But one thing that she referenced, it actually made me think of something you just shared too, that full presence of it. She just said, I love going to be a crew. She just like, I don't have any interest in running, but I know that when I go crew an ultra, I'm just here and everything else just kind of goes away. And so that's something that you referenced as that you just enjoy that. And I love how you want to see like, well, how many days can we expand that? How far could we take that and still get the enjoyment out of it? And I really appreciated that. So it's a cool part about ultras.
It's a great feeling. I mean, it's like, do I want to, like after we're done chatting, like at some point today, I'm going to have to cook and clean and do things, like when you're running an ultra, you don't have to do any of that. And like, you just get to run. And it's like, you get to have one activity that you love that you have decided to do. It's not maintenance, it's not your daily task. And it's like, that is a special feeling. And I think it's like one that, to like have the opportunity to be able to do it is something that I think 99% of humans are not afforded, and so it's just like being able to live a life where you get to pursue those types of goals is just, I mean, there's no better gift.
But I really enjoy that, just that thought process with it, because it's something that just as you mentioned it, I personally enjoy it. Obviously not on the caliber of races, but it seems interesting now. It makes me more intrigued by a 200-mile race. Hoping my wife doesn't listen to this. That's
obviously I think you should do one. You don't know what a second night is like till you get to a second night, and then you're just like, oh, all right, this is different.
This is it. That's where you said that tends to be the toughest one is.
Yeah. It's brutal. I mean, I haven't entered many third nights, but I assume a third night's hard too. But it's like the once I feel like for most people, it's like kind of around the 40-hour mark is like where the sleep deprivation really starts to play a factor. And like that's interesting mentally, like hallucinations, real. Yeah, it's just like, I don't know. There's been points in races where I've in my head I've been like kind of awake and running but also dreaming. Like there was one time where I was like trying to order at a German bakery in my head for I don't know how long, but I was like attempting to remember the words and blah blah, but I'm just like running through the woods. And that's all happening somewhere in the background. It's like what your brain is capable of in those moments is a very strange thing, and it's cool to experience.
So I'm curious to ask randomly, what was it that hallucinating you so many miles deep, nights deep into this race was trying to order from the German bakery? Like what was...
Man, it's ironic is that I have, since the last time I've been to a German bakery, I'm gluten-free now, which is just so disappointing. But I was probably trying to order a Käsestange, which is like a cheesy bread, basically, but like a German cheesy bread that's like, don't think of Domino's, think of like the best possible version of that thing.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, just all over Europe too. Like the breads there, the bakery, like it's not even comparable when you go into
so much better.
Oh, it's calling them the same foods is just, it's not even the same. It's two different things.
It's not fair to a European bakery.
No. We were I think last time we went to Spain like 2 or 3 summers ago, and just to be able to walk into one of those little deli shops and be able to grab 2 sandwiches and they get like 2 beers, and it was like 10 $10 total. Like, it was just super cheap, best meal we've ever had, and it was just great.
Yeah.
So not comparable at all.
No, for sure. that was one of the more pleasant daydreams for sure. You know, I'm like,
well,
hey, this is distracting. We'll lean into this instead of how bad my feet hurt.
some German cheesy bread. All right, so 200 miles is the, like, right now that's where you're at. Are there? I mean, have you looked at like the Monster 300? Have you considered that bad boy?
It has too much pavement. I don't want to run through the city of
Oh,
Tucson. So there's like
okay.
60 miles of pavement in the middle of that race. That just doesn't interest me. So I mean, I'm down to run longer distances, but not that specific race. There is in 2028, I've been invited to participate in a 360-mile race. That's a point-to-point non-repeating course in Hawaii, and that I plan to do for sure. So there will be that will hopefully happen in 2028. There's plenty of things around the world that I want to do. I mean, I just got a message on Instagram that I haven't even responded to, but about like there's a race that apparently traces the Spartan army's path to Thermopylae, where the 300 story took place. That would be awesome. So there's lots of things that I'd like to do, and yeah, I don't even have like having a comprehensive list like isn't possible because there's just so many options, especially when you start adding in FKTs, long trails outside of races, that sort of thing. It's like it's almost endless.
There's definitely far more opportunity if you were to go solo. What about, I mean, have you considered, or have you, I mean, you may have even done it, but Nolan's 14?
That's on the books too. That's requires some scouting. So it's like there's some upfront time you have to spend to be able to like really make that happen. But yeah, that would be interesting. I mean, I think sometime in the future, I think attempting Barkley would be interesting. But for that, like, I need to learn how to read a topographic map a little better than I currently can. Like, I can do it, but I'm not that good at it. And could I do it when I've had no sleep and I'm 50 hours in and it's foggy and raining and I'm covered in thorns? Like, probably not. So I would probably want to take some classes and practice some skills there. But yeah, there's just like there's so many interesting things to do. That's why I haven't repeated a ton of races. I mean, I say that I've done Cocodona 4 times because it took 4 times to get it to go, mostly okay. And yeah, it's like I want new experiences. I mean, my biggest why, I guess, is the adventure side of the sport, and that is ultimately what I am chasing.
Which, I mean, and that makes a lot of sense. Lots of opportunity. Why stick to just one thing? I'm curious to ask, really quick, did it happen to be, that's not the Spartathlon you were referencing, is it?
It's not the Spartathlon. I think that's not it because the race that I got a message about was mostly on trail, and I think the Spartathlon's mostly on roads.
Yeah. And I didn't know if it had that much elevation, and then the one in Hawaii, you said it's a non-repeating course in Hawaii?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's on the Big Island, and yeah, it looks awesome. Like there's you climb both volcanoes, so there's only 65,000 feet of climbing over the course of 360 miles, which really isn't like a crazy amount, but 20,000 of it comes in 40 miles. So you've got like you like go from sea level to 13,000 feet twice in the space of 40 miles, which would be an insane experience. And then you spend like a lot of time traversing the volcanoes, and in the little runner guide that they put together, they've got they're like, you must carry at least an N95 mask with you in case you encounter poisonous clouds of sulfuric volcanic gas. Which I don't know what it says about me, but that detail, I was like, sign me up immediately. That sounds so awesome. So yeah, I think it's called the Hamakea 360, and that is that'll be the inaugural year for it, and yeah, that will be very exciting.
I love that it's that's it. The N95 mask required. That's what got you.
Like let's go.
Man, that's just fascinating. Well, we all love to see. I mean, we love to. I say we, just fans of the sport, love to watch it. I know you referenced that Forged in Failure that I heard you reference it. Is that, I tried to look for it the other day. I didn't see it. Is there a timetable of it? Is it out? And
It
if
is
not,
not
when is
out
it out?
yet. So
Okay.
it took a little while to get some footage that we wanted from previous iterations of Cocodona. Was kind of one of the major delays and just like putting everything together. But we're supposed to get the rough cut to look over like this weekend. And so hopefully we are looking at kind of an early July sort of release. And I know you're based in Northern Colorado, so we're hopefully going to do a screening at the Lyric. So
Oh,
if that happens, I'll definitely let you know, and we
yeah,
can meet in person and
dude, that'd be
hang
great.
out with some of the community there. But yeah, we'll hopefully do some live screenings, and that'll obviously be a YouTube release and everything. So when that happens, I will obviously be posting about it. Hopefully, I will be putting in lots of time promoting it because I don't have anything else to do. So
Well, I'm excited for it. It sounded pretty amazing from getting to listen. I mean, the only reference point was in that Cam Hanes podcast, is where I heard about it. So very, very excited for that. And I'd love to ask you too, just getting outside of that. I know we had talked about a little bit about just amateurs and how they show up to big races, but what do you think? And just coaching and talking to people, where do you see as like just low hanging fruit for the average just person that's interested in ultra running or just running in general? Like, where do you see just pretty common threads for them that they can take it up a notch?
so for most ultra runners that I work with, like what I spend my time doing is telling people to do less. And a lot of really dedicated people, whether you're front, middle, back of the pack, it's like you have these like ambitious goals, and a lot of these people really sacrifice sleep. And so if your sleep schedule isn't working, like that's the first thing to try to adjust. It's like, okay, instead of trying to cram in miles where they don't fit, like how can we adjust this so we're focusing on quality over quantity? The analogy I use is if you picture your life resources as a pie graph, like you have a certain percentage of that pie that can be devoted to running, and that includes recovery, mobility, strength training, all of those things. And I've worked with people who have 5%. I've worked with people who have 20%, 50%. Me as a professional, I probably have like 80 to 90% on any given week. So everybody's different, right? And if you can't make your pie graph bigger, you can just adjust the slices of the pie. And so if you're trying to fit too much in, like the graph's going to break, you will break. And so the low hanging fruit is the focusing on quality over quantity. That's like the easiest thing. Well, I'd say easiest. That's the thing that most people could use to change. That can often take, like, that's where a coach can be really helpful because it takes a little bit, I think, experience, expertise to look at like a schedule and holistically assess like where can we place training, what makes the most sense here. More practically, if you like, if you don't have, if you're not interested in working with a coach, or you feel like you have all of that under control, fueling fueling is huge. Like everything, most of what we know about how to fuel for endurance sports has been learned in the past 5 years. Like the gels are way better than they used to be. Running snacks are way better than they used to be. So I think if most people, if not aiming at high carb, should probably aim for higher carb intake. I think obviously that comes with a cost too. So, can be some cost benefit analysis. Like I think training like you plan to fuel on race day on all your long runs is a great idea. If you don't want to do that for every run throughout the week because gels are expensive, like that's understandable. Like where can you purposely put fueling, like around intensity and around duration? So adjusting like that, I think a lot of runners don't strength train enough. Even if you're doing 2 20-minute sessions a week, like that could make a big difference. Protein is another big thing. You look at any kind of surveys of endurance athletes, it seems like endurance athletes are probably widely protein deficient. So like those are all low hanging fruit that you can make relatively easy life changes and adjustments that don't require like this like massive shift in anything and make significant improvements.
I love that you brought up sleep. And first, I was watching Hans Troyer was talking about it. He was answering some question or something, and he had said, honestly, like he had mentioned too, access to resources. I think he, like as a pro, like becoming pro, like he's just like, I just have easier access to resources to like get stuff done, which I think you had maybe on a parallel similarity to that pie graph that you mentioned, just having a bigger piece of that chunk. But he said that's a big focus for him, is like everybody's training super hard, but I want to recover the hardest. So he's like, that's been his shift. And it really made internalized for me because I started looking at my sleep, not ideal. So what would be, and I know everybody's different, like what do you look for some of your coaching? Like how much sleep are you hoping somebody gets per night?
I think for most people, roughly 8 hours on average, I think is like a good thing to aim for. Like that traditional wisdom seems to hold up anecdotally. But after if you're doing a 6 hour long run, you probably need 9 hours. You might need 10 hours. Like I try to have at least one day a week where I don't set an alarm. So I'm just waking up whenever I wake up. But if it's kind of around the margins. Like if someone's getting 6 a night, can we try to get 7 a night? If someone's getting 7, can we try to get 8? If someone's getting 6, but their sleep quality is terrible, like they have all these bad habits surrounding their sleep, can we get 6 quality hours in? Like this kind of goes back to the phone hygiene, that sort of thing. So it's on a case by case basis. If people have really busy work lives, they have kids, it's like it can be really complicated, right? And so it's like, where can we realistically make gains? Whether it's with training, sleep, fueling, recovery, all of those things. And you just kind of have to assess like what is going to be sustainable there. And sometimes that results in a reduction in training hours and an increase in trying to increase sleep time. Sometimes it results in, okay, this person needs to sacrifice. Like we've got some wasted time here in little chunks. They've spent a little bit of time doom scrolling or whatever doing that. It's like, can we eliminate that? And it's not like I'm having this type of in-depth conversation with everybody, because I sort of let athletes like dictate how much they're telling me about like their life as a whole. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to overstep my bounds as like their running coach, but when someone's training for an ultra, especially working with someone who's training for a 200, it's like this needs to be a significant portion of your life for you to reach your goals, right? And so it's like, how can we best fit it in? And so it's about making gains from wherever they're at. It's like you have to lose sight a little bit of what's ideal and just be like, how can we improve the person as opposed to how can we get to the North Star,
That's fantastic advice. Really, really great advice. And you mentioned the sleep hygiene too. Stuff like I mentioned that 1 hour of no phone before you go to, or when you wake up, probably applies to right before bedtime too.
100%.
Just to help wind down, things like that for ensuring to get to sleep. So one other thing, I'd love to ask you about, if you don't mind, I'd love to ask you about that high carb fueling, if that's okay, sure. Just to pick your brain. Because you see it a lot. And just as a fan of the sport, it's obviously something that everybody seems to be talking about, referencing. So my last 2, I did a Desert Rats 100K. Well, we're in your area actually. Just
oh, nice. Yeah.
I've done it the last 2 years. It's a really fun race.
Yeah, that's an awesome trail system, the Cocodona system. It's great. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I really thoroughly enjoyed it. But this year I experimented more with the high carb stuff. And I would take one tailwind high carb. I think I was pulling in like 120 grams of carbs per hour. And
nice.
By, I think my first year that I did it, I think I was 1630. This year I was just over 13 hours. So I was happy with my time drop and like improving. But I got really full. My stomach wasn't turning, but I got super full. And it got me thinking, I was like, I have no idea, like, how many carbs should I take? And I started like researching, like, what do I do? Like, how do you figure out what does that look like? Because my stomach wasn't turning, but I was really full. So I stopped taking it in, which meant I stopped taking water. And by the end, like, had it been a 100-mile race, it would have been a different problem. Fortunately, I was like, I have 10 miles left. Let's just push this through and finish it. But how do you dial in how much to take? Like, how much you might actually need?
Do you know what your heart rate was roughly for that kind of effort?
It was zone 2 mostly, which for me was in the 130s.
Okay.
Um,
So I would say like zone 2, most people don't need to be at 120 an hour. So
okay.
like I have experimented on some like higher intensity runs being at like 140 an hour, but that's when I'm like, on uphills, I might be bumping very close to, if not above threshold for like short periods of time, right? And my like average heart rate for a 4 hour run when I was doing 140 grams of carbs an hour was like 155, 150,
Okay.
somewhere pretty high. So when I think a lot of people, um, men and women are a little different. Women typically need fewer carbs because they're just naturally more efficient at burning fat than men are. Plus, they're typically smaller, so it's like even smaller men need lower carbs because of metabolism and like the requirements to fuel. So it's all over the place in terms of like it's going to be unique to the individual. But really, like the kind of golden rule is like higher intensity, higher carbs, lower intensity, lower carbs. So if I was running, I'm going to just talk about me because I know me best.
Yep.
If I was running, Desert Rats 100K, I'd probably be aiming at somewhere in the mid 8 hours, right? And then so I'm like, I'd be roughly a heart rate of like 145, 155, probably a lot of that race. And I'd be shooting for probably that 120 grams of carbs an hour kind of goal for me, and I am 5'9" and 175 pounds. So that's roughly like where I sit. And then if someone who was 6'3" and 190 was trying to run the same time I'm running, like maybe they're going to be at 140, 150. But it's like a sliding scale for the individual. And so it sounds to me like you were probably overfueling and
Mhm.
like weren't at a level where you were actually like your furnace wasn't burning hot enough to actually use all 120 grams. And so like that for me, like that's presented as a problem in 200s, where typically for the first 100 miles, I've aimed for something like 90 grams of carbs an hour, and then I drop it down to about 60 for the second 100. And it's not perfect because it changes a little bit depending on the terrain I'm in, but these are like rough averages. And so like as intensity drops, and a way to notice this, like for me, it's just you start having some stomach issues, some farts you can't trust, like that sort of thing, in the second half of a race. And so like that's when you pull back on the carbs. Like that's a practical sign that the stomach's not working at the intensity that you want it to. So it's like this experimentation process with each person. And so like what I typically will say for most people, because a lot of people I work with come to me and they're like, yeah, I'm getting like 30 to 40 grams an hour. So then it's like, okay, let's get up to 60. Like I think 60 is a really good place where most people will feel better,
Mhm.
regardless of intensity. And then it's like, okay, so is this person happy at 60? And is like, what are their goals? Are they finishing races? Are they trying to compete? Like, what are we doing here? Are they running 100 milers or are they running 50Ks? Like, and so then you go for like, okay, I'm higher intensity. Let's ratchet it up. Let's train our gut on long runs, that sort of thing. So it is a little bit all over the place, but in general, I think most people underfuel in my experience.
Okay. Which, and I could say for sure that I had in the past. That's why I was interested in it. But that makes sense. Is it, and just to regurgitate what you had shared there, the furnace not burning hot enough, like, and because I know like at some point it switches from burning fats to burning carbs. And so if your plan is to go high carb, should you be trying to go at that higher intensity of heart rate, essentially just to be burning that fuel source versus the lower one, is what you're sharing?
Basically, yeah. So if
Okay.
it just depends on the timeline of your race, because like for most people, if you're running Western states, you're not finishing in 14 hours, right? So it's like
Yeah.
your muscular endurance is going to be the factor as opposed to like your cardiovascular capacity more than anything else. So like for depending on the timeline of the race, like the answer to that question is a little bit different. But for in general, I'd say like loading up the front half of your race with more carbs as opposed to the back half is the way to go, because your metabolism over time slowly shifts from carbs being preferential to more fat preferential.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. That was something that
Sure,
just
yeah,
I forgot even like I wanted to circle back because I did the Quad Rock 50 and I had the same exact thing happen, where it just I guess wasn't going hard enough. It just felt full, stomach not turning, but definitely over fueling with it. So it's part of that unique puzzle to dial in. So
for sure. It is just like
yeah,
like, and especially getting longer and longer. It's like you have to do the races, because it's not like most people can go out on 50-mile training runs, and it's not something you can do every week for sure. So you just don't. You only have a limited amount of opportunities to experiment, and so it is just this kind of slow process over
Mhm.
years to learn like what's working for me.
Yeah. Um, and I appreciate all the time that you've spent and just all the good conversation. I would like to ask, as we put a bow on this too, you mentioned writing a couple times. Um, and I'm just curious, as somebody that likes to read and anybody that's listening that might want to read some of your stuff, like where are we going to find it? What do you like to write about?
Yeah, it's I have a Substack. It's a Run Tough Mindset on Substack.
Okay.
So it's substack.com/@ run tough mindset, just exactly how it sounds. And mostly I write, I've got race reports when I'm in training. I'll do a training log every week, that sort of thing. I mean, right now it's kind of a little all over the place. The title of the last article I wrote is called "You Are Not a Snowflake." So
I think I
I'll
saw a
write,
reference to that one.
yeah, I'll write sometimes kind of about mindset things and just you know I don't. We we both commiserated before this about like, yeah, we don't get into political issues, but I will get into just like some societal things where like I think these are things we can, in my opinion, all be doing to like make ourselves better day by day. Um, I do, it's just kind of whatever I want to write about. And so often it's going to be running related. Sometimes it won't be. I'm working on an article right now about why I think you should stop listening to music on shuffle. So that's going to be
Nice.
related to purposeful consumption of content, that sort of thing. And so a lot of it's going to have to do with mindset. And sometimes I write about existential stuff. I've got a draft and a folder called Universal Consciousness and Ultrarunning. And so it's just like whatever interests me. It's the nice thing about having your own Substack that I'm not on a publishing schedule. I'm not interested in monetizing it. So it's just like whatever comes to mind, that's what's going to happen. And if my wife, edits it and says it's good enough, it'll show up there.
Okay. Well, will we ever have the opportunity to read a book kind of with your life in it? I mean, do you have future plans for that?
Yeah, actually, in the time since surgery, I started on like some memoir style essays. So I've got some drafts of those started. I mean, I've written 3 novels that I haven't published, but one of them I think is actually good, and so maybe someday I'll get around to like finishing a process for that and attempting to publish it. So maybe you'll eventually read one of those. But yeah, I have lots of ideas. I'm much better at having ideas than following through on them, which I think is a very common theme among writers. But hopefully at some point there will be something in book form that we can all hold in our hands.
Yeah, well, that's something that I personally enjoy hearing people's stories, what make them tick, and you live such an interesting life and are living such an interesting lifestyle that it's. I personally enjoy reading about that stuff. There's a couple people like Courtney DeWalter. Um, I would love to just hear just glimpses of her life. I think she's such a unique
Hmm.
interest. Everything I've seen from her, she just seems like what a wonderful person that I would love to learn more
100%.
about. Just so if you're listening, Courtney, please write your book because we would love to know just more. Right? And yeah, no pressure, but it's just it's fun for me. It's something I enjoy. So, and I'd love to just hand it over to you as we close this up. What are some things? I mean, one thing I'd love to ask is what do you typically not get to talk about that you wish you got asked more about? And we
What do
can
I,
close it off with this, and maybe it opens up the second chapter of this.
what do I not get to talk about? I mean, I've enjoyed the conversation. I think it's nice that I think, there's like I've done enough podcasts at this point that if people are interested in hearing about the Triple Crown from last year, there's places they can go, and even Cocodona, it's like there's recaps of that. So I appreciate that we just kind of dove into ultra running related topics, but not necessarily. I feel like we didn't repeat a lot, which is great, and not always something I've said about every podcast I've been on. So I appreciate that. But what do I not get to talk about? I mean, I think that, and I've probably talked about this too, but this is just something I've been thinking a lot about lately and relates to the last article I wrote. I think that we are in like a cultural place where we have like so much nihilism and negativity. It infects everything, like people get upset. We've referenced cable news. It's like a good use case for it. It's like algorithmic content and cable news are just delivering outrage to people on conveyor belts 100% of the time. And our brains are evolutionarily wired to pay attention to negative stimuli more than positive stimuli. Like it's more useful for our survival to remember where grandma got eaten by a leopard as opposed to where we found a tree filled with delicious bananas. So it's like that mechanism isn't useful right now to many of us living in the affluent world, in the United States, Western Europe, those types of places. And so, like, I'm really disturbed by the amount of like pessimism I encounter amongst young people. And I think that there's so much positivity in the world. Like, I'm so happy that the World Cup is going on right now and I'm happy that it's in America because I think that people all around the world are traveling here and learning that the United States isn't just a succession of news stories that go viral. Like, the United States is a place filled with people who are different, and people who, some of them are not awesome, but most are great. And one of the stories that I've been so happy to see is like the Algerian World Cup team in Lawrence, Kansas. Like this like small town, middle America, being so welcoming and enthusiastic to a completely foreign group of humans, and they're so stoked to be there. And it's like, this is the world that we're actually living in. Like, we're not living in the world of outrage and fury. And when you talk to people, whether they believe different things than you or they believe the same things as you, like, most people are nice. And it's like, if you can figure out a way to orient your life around focusing on those things and like giving yourself the opportunity to appreciate the fact that you have this one shot on this beautiful planet, as opposed to just lamenting the fact like of whatever circumstances might not be working in your favor, like that is where we all need to put our focus, because that's the way we're going to get out of the problems we have, and that's the way that we're going to be able to like once again pull together as a community. And that's what like I think the World Cup does so beautifully, is like it's like the single biggest example of collective effervescence. It's bigger than the Olympics. Like, more people watch the World Cup final than any Olympic event, and that happens every single time. And so it's like that's what's been on my mind a lot lately.
I
It's
love,
just,
man.
yeah, like pulling together as humanity and trying to be charitable to fellow people, even if they are saying things that you disagree with. Like, if we all zoomed out at the highest possible level, it's like, what do most people want? They want the most amount of flourishing for the most amount of people, and everything else in terms of how to get there is just details. And so if that's what we can base your human relationships on, like, that's the path forward. And that is just not what I see happening around me a lot. And that is like what I hope to be. Like, I hope my example of pursuing my passions and hopefully being grateful and like nice in the way that I interact with other humans. Like, I want to be a part of that cultural change. So yeah, that's like what's been occupying a lot of my mental space lately.
Mm. When it want to ask to the recipe for people to get out of it, but it also, and I don't want to answer the question, but it seems like you live that life too. I think a lot of what we opened up and talked about, that living intentionally, not letting it dictate your day with, in the morning, first thing, but just intentionally, this is what I'm reading, this is what I'm focusing on. Now I'm meditating, which is a totally different practice. But I mean, what would be the tools? If not those, what additional things would you give to, this anybody that's feeling pessimistic about the world around them?
I mean, the answer is go meet people. Like when I was giving a talk at the college in Grand Junction, Colorado Mesa, someone asked a really good question, and they were like, "You talk a lot about the team aspect of ultra running, and you also talk a lot about individual responsibility. Like, how would you tell people to balance both of those when we live in a very individualistic society in America?" And I thought that was a really thoughtful question and not one that I expected to be asked. But my answer is basically it's like, okay, so we do live in a more individualist place, like in China or other more collectivist societies, like even Western Europe. It's like there are facilitated ways of connecting with people that have been there for years and years and years, and tradition, and there's more of a shared past than there is in America, because we are the melting pot. We're not an old country, like all of those things. And so like it requires you to go to places. Like there's this really famous book by this political scientist named Robert Putnam called Bowling Alone, and he basically like charts the death of bowling leagues as like a way to kind of show the slow collapse of American civic society. And that is one of the big problems. Like we need people to be going to physical spaces, because what being online allows you to do is allows you to read the words totally lacking tone and body language of someone who disagrees with you, and then say, you know what, giant F you, middle finger, you're a terrible person, like blah blah, like all these things you would never say to someone in person, most likely. And so if you can go to physical spaces and interact with people, like that's the way to feel better about things. Because like if I were to have like sit down conversations with all my neighbors about like specific issues, like I'm sure we're going to disagree about things, but I know that I could go to my neighbor's house and be like, hey, like I have an emergency, I have to go out for the weekend, can you feed my dog while I'm gone? And they're going to say yes. And I hope that they know the same thing about me, right? And so like that's the connection. And I think that people don't have that. Like in my article that I just wrote, if there's just like a lot of disturbing facts about loneliness, like something like 54% of American adults report feeling like nobody knows them, and like that is so sad in a world where materially we are doing better than ever. Like there's like all these divergent facts when you look about like people living longer 50 years ago, pulling people out of poverty, like all of these things, but then like we have this crisis of loneliness. And I think, unfortunately, fortunately, I love the rugged individualism of America, but it is on you to find community. And so I think doing that in a physical space is probably my best suggestion. I also think, just to circle back to meditation, I think meditation is as close to a panacea as it comes. It's like being able to pull back from your thought process is a superpower. Like you start going down a negative thought spiral, being able to just have the impulse to be like, I'm going to take a deep breath, everything's okay. Like that alone does so much for you, and it requires practice. So that's why meditation is a practice.
The tipped me over the edge on, it was something that I was looking to explore because I've not explored it, and now I'm like, I feel like I have to make a commitment, even just if I can get a small window in. It made me think of, and you mentioned that getting people together. We had Ryan Reynolds came out randomly and did a talk for this big conference that I was at, and just totally random. I know it doesn't seem like belongs in this conversation, but he shared this one thing that I think applies here. He just said the conversation changes when there's blood in the room. And it was it just made me feel that right there, that when you have two people interacting together, everything changes. That it's easy to, when everybody's separated. And so and I love the connection, just your neighbor having that personal connection, even though you disagree, you're still helpful, that sort of thing. So, and I'm telling you right now, my viewpoint has changed of you, Mr. Korth, is that I think Korth 2028 shirt that needs to get made, and not for your Hawaii race. So
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I went to school to college thinking I wanted to be a politician. I have a bachelor's and a master's degree that I was planning on putting to use in DC, and there is literally nothing that sounds less appealing to me in the entire world than doing that. So
All right. Well, we'll take. I'll take
maybe
the.
maybe that'll change at some point, but man, hopefully I can, have a good influence on some amount of people in some other fashion because oh no.
Yeah. Could be the ultimate 200-mile race. Yeah,
Yeah.
just a big slugfest through politics. And I really appreciate you taking some time and sharing all of that. I think we could unpack and just dive into that last piece right there for an enormous amount of time, and maybe one day we can, because I really appreciate your viewpoints, and thank you so much for taking some time and joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, and this was really fun. And yeah, I mean, I appreciate the chance to just sort of like soliloquize about what's been on the mind because it's
Yeah.
it's like I'm blessed to have a venue to be able to do that, so I appreciate it.
And it's nice to see somebody with the venue doing great things and spreading like good word for doing good things. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Progress doesn't happen all at once. It only happens 1 mile at a time. If this show resonated with you, pass it along. And until next time, take the shot.